everybody. Dan Illman and Mike Beer, the DRF race of the day for Wednesday, March the 15th, race number 7 at Gulfstream Park. We're going 1.70 miles on the Tapeta surface. This is a second level allowance race with a $65,000 claiming option. Let's take a look at this field. Please scan or click on the QR code for race of the day access on mobile and free formulator past performances. We're supposed to beware the Ides of March, Mike, but this is a race where maybe you could make some money, because as we take a look at this tote board, it seems rather wide open. Grand David, who last raced in the Tropical Park Derby, is going to face older horses in his seasonal debut. 7-2 on the morning line. Any one of 3 or 4 could be the chalk in here.
Yeah, I don't really know who's going to go favorite. I suppose it could be Grand David off a little bit of a layoff, dropping out of several stakes attempts. I don't know. That horse has pretty good speed, so I guess that could play in this race. It does kind of feel like a little bit of a wide open race, especially because it feels like, at least in my opinion, some of the more talented horses, they're really more turf than synthetic.
That's a very good point. And I think also the pace is going to be a key determining factor in who comes out on top. We'll see what our friends at Timeform US have to say about the pace. Here's the pace projector. They believe this race will favor front runners. I agree with them. There are no speed horses in this race, with the exception, I think, of the number 2 Grand David. And Timeform US doesn't believe he's going to get to the lead. I do think that Grand David's going to the front.
I do too, but I'll also agree that they're probably not going to be going that fast early in this race. I thought Grand David, just from his inside post here, would probably come out running and make the early lead down. We'll see how far he can take him.
The number 1 Mannix does have a little bit of tactical speed and can probably work out a ground-saving pace-tracking trip after breaking from the inside post. He's fresh. He hasn't run since October, and he ran into a good group last time out in the Grade 3 Ontario Derby up at Woodbine. The winner of that race is a useful horse. Banked about $500,000, and he bounced out of that race to finish 3rd in an allowance with an 86 buyer. He'll have to deal with the layoff, but we know he likes the Tapeta.
Yeah, that's one of the bonuses with this horse. He's also dropping out of 3 straight stakes races. The last time that they ran this horse against an allowance field, Dan, he actually ran pretty well that day, winning up at Woodbine. He only won it by 3/4 of a length, but he didn't get clear until very late in that race, and actually won a lot easier than it may look on paper. I thought he was a major player in here.
The number 2 is Grand David. This one is a stakes winner on the synthetic at Gulfstream Park. Now, he was listed as a vet scratch at Tampa Bay on March the 1st. To only 2 weeks since that race, you can assume perhaps that all is well. He last ran in the Tropical Park Derby, a race that featured a fast pace, and he didn't do much running late after being sort of bothered at the start, but that was a good field. One of the horses that dead heated for 3rd came back to run 3rd in the graded Canadian turf with a 95 buyer, and this horse's speed plays very well in this race.
Right. I mean, just, breaking poorly in that last start, Dan, and not getting really anywhere near the lead. It's probably enough of an excuse, because just based on his overall form, he's just clearly a horse who wants to be forward early. He feels like a horse who could win this race, Dan, if he makes the early lead. And I guess that's really possible in here, because we've already talked about the pace of the race. I don't know. I just don't know how good I really think this horse is. And I didn't like his race 2 starts back really at all. He was favored in that race. I know it was another stake, but he had no trouble making the lead that day. The pace wasn't that fast. He was no match through the stretch. I don't know. I don't think he's that good. He's a really short price on the morning line. I'm looking for other horses in this race.
You don't have to worry about surface for the number 3 Win for the Money. He's a true polytrack / Tapeta sort of horse. He's also getting Lasix once again and will be racing as a first-time gelding. The worry is the layoff. We haven't seen this horse in about 11 months when he ran in the Rush Away at Turfway Park, which turned out to be a pretty live race, producing 2 next out winners, as well as another horse that came back to place in a first-level allowance at Churchill with an 84 buyer. This horse has some upside potential. The layoff is concerning.
The layoff is because it's such a long layoff. That's the real issue. I guess if you look up Cassian Formulator, he actually has pretty good numbers with horses coming off of longer layoffs, routing on synthetic. And of course, that sample is pretty large because a lot of it's at Woodbine. So I'm not going to be too concerned about the layoff. He has to improve, obviously, in his 4-year-old debut. I think there's a chance he could do it. He could fall into the right kind of trip here as well. He's a really good price on the line. I would try to use him somewhere if he's anywhere near the 15-1.
The number 4 is Newsworthy. He's one of the horses trying synthetic for the first time, and you could argue that he's very well bred for it. He's by the great stallion Tappet, who gets 16% winners with synthetic routers. But this dam, she not only won the test at Saratoga on dirt, but she won her first 3 starts on a synthetic surface, and she has foaled a synthetic winner. This horse is still lightly raced, making his first start of the year for Mott after a tough race at Keeneland where he got wired.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. There's a lot to like about him, as you already mentioned, not just the pedigree, which is a really good one, but he's already shown versatility anyway. Winner on dirt, winner on turf already, so it doesn't feel like surface is that important to him. He has a really good running style for this race because he's got really good tactical speed. Any one of his turf routes that you watch, Dan, he's always really handy in those races, and he actually has run some really good ones on the grass as well. I think he's a very dangerous horse in here.
And the horse that wired him last time out at Keeneland, he's not a bad horse at all. He came back to run third in the Grade 2 Fort Lauderdale with a 96 Beyer speed figure. There are things to like about Newsworthy, to be sure. The number 5 is Ever Dangerous, another horse trying synthetic for the first time. He's by the great turf stallion, Kitten's Joy, who gets 13% winners with synthetic routers. Ever Dangerous ran in a second level allowance going 11 furlongs last time out. And I wonder if that pace, that distance just sort of saw him out a little bit. The pace wasn't very fast. He advanced and actually put a head in front with 3/8 of a mile to go, and then he flattened out late.
Yeah, I'll give him a pass for that last one. I do think that distance might have just been a little too far for him. His prior turf form is obviously really good, and it makes him a serious contender in here if he can transfer it over to the synthetic surface. We'll see if that happens, Dan. To me, it's kind of all about price with this horse. He's a good turf horse. I've never been his biggest fan, but obviously his form, if he transfers, it's going to make him really hard to beat in here. I just don't think I would want to take too short a price, just hoping that he transferred it over to synthetic. And with Irad taking them out here or keeping them out here, feels like this horse is getting bet in this race.
The horse that beat him last time out has shown a lot of promise as a longer distance horse, coming back to run second in the McDermott with a 98 Beyer speed figure. The now horse in this race could be the number 6 Carruthers, who was claimed for $35,000 after this race, a big figure win over course and distance at Gulfstream Park. And Carruthers was able to sit just off of the pace, doesn't change leads in the stretch, but runs down this sharp pace setter, a horse that would come back to win with an 88 Beyer. Carruthers got a 95.
Yeah, it's a really hard trying horse that he just out finishes there at the end, Alley of Johnny. I really like that horse. Boy, I don't know. What do you think about that race, Dan? I know it's a big step forward for this horse. When I watched that replay, they came to the top of the stretch. It looked like Carruthers might win by 5. Like he was always traveling really strongly. He looked like he was going to go right by. I kind of felt like he wanted to hang there.
I kind of give credit to the horse that you mentioned was a hard trying sort, fighting back a little bit. Maybe Carruthers wanted to hang a little bit, but I do respect that horse that he outfought down to the wire. Personally, stepping up in class off this 95 Beyer in a race that might not set up for him as well as the last one, that concerns me a little bit, but he is a true synthetic horse coming into this race off a big fig. A 5-1 is a fair price on the morning line. I'm not sure I would go too short on him, however. The 7 is Brooklyn Strong, and this is a horse that was on the Kentucky Derby trail after winning the Grade 2 Remsen as a 2-year-old, and maybe that Derby trail just knocked him out a little bit. He's sort of been trying to find his way ever since. He was listed as a vet scratch at Gulfstream on December the 8th. He's by Wicked Strong, 12% winners with synthetic routers. The dam did win on the synthetic surface. He'll be making his first start since late October.
I don't really know what to do with him, Dan. They're running him in the right kind of race here again. Finally, they did drop him in class off a little bit of a layoff last summer, and that didn't really work out. But then it's been all stakes races again since then. For whatever reason, he's just never really panned out. If he's some kind of big price and you feel like you want to give him a shot switching surfaces here and getting back into the right kind of a race, I'm not going to argue too hard with you. I'm not betting this horse.
But it's not like he was embarrassed in some of those stakes races against New York breds last year, the Saginaw, the Evan Shipman, the Greenwood Cup going a mile and a half, a graded race. He got wired when he was up close to the pace. He still might have a little bit something left. It'll be interesting to see what we get on the Synth. The third horse from his last race did come back to run second in an open stake, the Discovery, with a 90 Beyer speed figure. Glynn County is a solid turf horse trying synthetic for the first time. Another one by Kitten's Joy, and he's coming out of a live race at Aqueduct in November, Mike. He was wired that day by a Tone, who of course came back to win the Grade 1 Pegasus World Cup Turf with a 104 Beyer speed figure, he being one of 3 next out winners to emerge from that race.
Yeah, I mean, listen, personally speaking, I would just look at his overall form and say, this is probably the most talented horse in the race. Whether you want to bet him trying a surface other than turf, for the first time, he has one start on dirt, a sloppy dirt track going 9 furlongs. He was abysmal in that race. So, whether you think he's going to transfer this form over to synthetic, to me, if he does, he wins. I don't know if I would want to bet on that proposition, but I do think he's the best horse.
And I wonder at this sharper distance if maybe he'll be left with too much to do. Perhaps he'll be outrun just a little bit early. I expect this to be a tight pack. Maybe the horse with the biggest kick will be able to close them down. Perhaps it's Glynn County making his synthetic debut for Michael Maker. Before we get to our top selections, please click the subscribe button on the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel for the latest DRF videos. Top pick time for our Wednesday race of the day. Newsworthy. Mike's got the synthetic pedigrees, got the connections, comes out of a solid race, and he might offer some value on the tote.
I thought there was enough pointing to him here, Dan, that I'll give him a shot here. I know he's got to handle the surface switch, but he's bred to do it. He's already run well on the other 2 surfaces. I'm going to hope that he handles it and gets another good trip in this race. As you pointed out, he's a great price on the morning line, in my opinion. I thought the 2 Cassie horses were both interesting off the layoffs here. I'm going to use both of them, but I want the 4 on top.
Curious to see what we get from Ever Dangerous as he makes his synthetic debut, but I do like them cutting back in distance with this horse, and he's run some nice races on the turf, but it's all about price in a fairly wide open race. 4163 for Mike, 5684 for me. It's the race of the day for the Ides of March at Gulfstream Park. Good luck.